Good morning, Waterhole Wanderers, and welcome to Live at the Waterhole on this wonderful Saturday morning. So we're starting today off at Linkwasha at Wangi National Park. My name is Johan Herbst. I'm the owner of this voice, and I'll be your presenter for today. So it looks like we've got a beautiful herd of elephant over here, in all shapes and sizes. Looks like a matriarchal herd. So old cow leading a group of females with their young. A lovely sight to see here on a Saturday morning. So just a quick reminder, this is a live and interactive experience. We'd love to hear from you, so send your comments or questions through on our app or website or any of the platforms shown below. So it looks like these elephants are busy dust bathing themselves, or at least this one in the front over here. There's not too much grass to graze on. And there's also just a beautiful leadwood that I've noticed just in the front, just to the right of that this big female in the center of our screen. A very beautiful old leadwood tree. It looks like it's dead now. Incredible trees the leadwoods are. So they burn for an incredibly long time, so they're very useful as a source of fuel. So many times when there's a bushfire that's gone through an area, these trees will still be burning for weeks after everything else has completely burnt down. So you can still see embers at night time of these leadwoods up to 3 weeks after a fire has gone through an area. Just absolutely mind-blowing how incredibly dense the leadwood is. Unfortunately, a lot of the leadwood has been removed from a lot of these beautiful biomes or habitats because they're so useful for fuel. So fortunately we have these reserves to protect these beautiful trees along with all the other animals and these beautiful elephants. So in a way, protecting these beautiful big mammals also inadvertently protects all the wonderful botany that occurs in the region, and all the other smaller mammals and reptiles and birds and everything. So I have a question here from Riley asking if there's any nutritional value in this grass. My tongue needs to warm up a little bit. So there is still definitely nutritional value in the grass, but just not as much as during the wet season. And also it takes a lot of water in order to digest this very dry grass. But it looks like these elephants are playing more with the soil and the dust than actually feeding on grass. So you can see some of them are just pushing the soil with their feet and then they're just loosening the soil a bit and then grabbing a bit of soil there and throwing it on their backs, or sometimes even eating the soil. So this is what we refer to as geophagia, when animals eat the earth, when they eat soil, or when they eat parts of rock. And this is in order to supplement their diets, which sometimes lack these essential minerals that you find in the soils and in the rock. Some beautiful scenes over here in Wangi. Some beautiful palm trees in the background too. You also have a little blacksmith lapwing in the foreground over here. Just looking for some tiny aquatic invertebrates, little insects in that occur close to the waterhole. Okay, let's head over to Old Donyo. Let's see what's happening over there. Okay, we've got some beautiful dazzle of zebra to the right of our screens, and then looks like a big bull elephant to the left. I was actually following last night, looking at this Old Donyo waterhole, and I was very fortunate to see some lions that were busy drinking water, and it seemed like the one lioness was drinking for ages, just drinking non-stop. So lions are also able to go for long periods without drinking water, or at least a couple of days or a few days, because they get a lot of their moisture content from the blood of the meat that they eat. So it's actually quite interesting. So when they do get a chance to drink, they maximize on that opportunity. So right where those zebra are standing right now, the lions were busy drinking from the water, this exact water hole. It's just absolutely fascinating how these animals, they use the landscape and the resources at different times. Something we refer to in ecology as resource partitioning. And then also, of course, animals use different parts of resources, and some use far less than others. We've got the warthog also joining the party, coming to watch the Springboks play the All Blacks. Come and watch the rugby game at the pub. We've got some beautiful starlings in picture as well, flying past. So you can see there's definitely a clear hierarchy over here at this waterhole. Elephants are in charge, and then the zebra are second, and then the warthog would be the last on that hierarchy. And this elephant's just like, come at me, bro. Another one, zebra. Oh, yeah, no. He's just had his protein shake, so he's not taking any nonsense from these guys, from the zebra. So I've got an interesting question from Harley asking whether there's a lot of conflict at these small waterholes. And so, not necessarily, well, it actually just depends on what time of year. And so obviously now being the more dry season in southern Africa, these smaller waterholes, there would be a lot more animals competing for the surface water. But luckily for elephants, they're able to dig holes close to surface water so that they can get some fresh water to drink. So they wait for the water, the underground water, to fill up the hole that they've dug, and then they'll drink that water, because elephants are quite fussy. But before I go off on a bit of a tangent there, so you're asking if there's a lot of conflict at these smaller water holes, and there definitely would be in the drier parts of the drier seasons. But when it's the wet season in the summer, there's a lot more areas where there's surface water, so there isn't as much competition. So the surface water is spread out more evenly throughout the landscape. But as you can see here, there is a bit of competition. The elephants do tolerate the zebra sometimes, but it's on the elephant's terms. And then the warthog will have to wait until the elephants are gone, and perhaps the zebra, depending on whether the zebra are tolerant of them or not. But you'll just see more intimidation techniques, tactics. So the elephants will just, they won't necessarily attack. They might just pretend like they're going to attack, but they don't actually follow through. So unless the zebra were to stand its ground, which is very unlikely against the elephant. But there would definitely be a lot more intra-specific competition. So intra-specific meaning within the same species. So there would be a bit of competition between the elephants and between the zebra and between the warthog. And so then it would obviously be the strongest that would get first access to the waterhole. So I've got a question here from Annelies Bruver. Not sure if I'm pronouncing your surnames or Brouwer correctly, but Annelies is asking how much water does an elephant slurp up when they cool themselves or bath. So an elephant can slurp up to about 200 liters of water, more commonly about 160 liters of water, just depending on the size of the elephant. But they can in a single day drink up to, or slurp up to 160 to to 200 liters of water. So they're definitely very thirsty. And also, this is partly because their digestive systems are not the most efficient, so they need to drink a lot of water in order to process the very fibrous diet that they have. So they eat a lot of dry plant material, and so, as we know, we need a bit of moisture to get to process and to digest all of that plant matter, that dry plant matter. You can see the giraffe just waiting its turn over there. It's like a kid waiting to ride the roller coaster. And the giraffe's like, but I'm tall enough, I promise. I remember when I was a kid how sad I was when, or upset I would be when I couldn't go on a roller coaster ride. And it was normally because you weren't tall enough, so it was indiscriminate of age, but if you weren't tall enough. So the giraffe, even though it's very tall, doesn't gain access to this waterhole just yet. So I've got a nice question here from Kenny asking, how far can elephants travel to reach a known water source? So with those long legs of theirs, they're able to travel up to 50 kilometers in a day to reach a water source, because they are very water dependent, as I mentioned, with their diets, and also to cool themselves off, especially in the summer or the hotter parts of the year. So they can travel long distances, and especially the elephants that you find in the Namib desert, in Namibia, and in the Kalahari, normally those desert elephants have much longer legs, which enables them to walk much further distances. So it's actually quite remarkable, and I'm sure they could even travel further. They're very resilient animals, but they're definitely very water dependent, so can't go too long without water. So Lola is asking, who makes the decision as to which waterhole they go to? So that decision is normally made by the matriarch, so the oldest cow, the oldest female in the herd. And so because she's the oldest and the most experienced, she'll know the best places to drink water and the best places to feed. So she is normally the one making that decision. So it's almost like a dictatorship. She just makes the decisions and the rest of them follow. So Annalise was also asking, how do you distinguish between a male and a female elephant, besides their size? So basically the tusks of a bull gets much larger, so that's also a sure way of determining between the sexes, whether it's male or female. So the males have much larger tusks and much thicker, and They also, typically you'll see males on their own or in small bachelor herds, whereas the females, they tend to be in much bigger groups. So just based on that alone, you could tell whether it's a male or female. And because it's just these two guys at the waterhole, it's most likely that these are elephant bulls. And also based on the size of their tusks. And then also just looking at their foreheads, they have a bit of a rounder forehead, and whereas the females, they have a bit more of an angular forehead, so it's a bit more of a sharper angle that it creates. Then of course there is the fifth leg that some elephants have. So elephants, you can't see their testes because they're very large, and so they actually need to be inside the body to maintain.
We know that adverts pay our bills, but you don't necessarily like them. So, this is a fantastic way to stop being interrupted. Sign up today and you'll get instant access to wildlife. 24/7, ad-free, live and on demand. No pesky commercials, no rude interruptions, just wild Africa exactly as it unfolds. Wild Earth Explorers, wilder together.
In Nguma, so let's go and check that out. Wow, that's absolutely stunning. The heaviest flying bird, Cory bustard. Such a beautiful bird. And we're very lucky to see this. I've only seen Cory bustards a handful of times while out in the field, so to see a Cory bustard drinking water is definitely very, very special to see. It's so interesting watching how different animals drink water. They all have their own techniques of slurping water, and you can see he's always maintaining vigilance. This Cory bustard over here, always looking out. So obviously they're very vulnerable to predators when they're busy drinking. And lots of predators will be hanging out at these water holes, knowing that all the animals have to drink at some point, with a few exceptions. They almost look like three birds that have sort of been put together. Look like a blue crane mixed with a ground scraper thrush and a Egyptian goose, like as if they were just sort of different parts of the birds were pasted together. And it's quite interesting seeing how this Cory bustard is bending its knees. You can see it's sort of bent backwards. Imagine trying to bend your knees like that. So they obviously, their joints bend in a different way. So these are the heaviest flying birds. So the heaviest birds are ostriches, but as we know, ostriches aren't able to fly. So these birds, they can weigh up to 19 kilograms, and they're the heaviest flying birds native to Africa. Does anyone perhaps know what the heaviest flying bird in the world is that isn't native to Africa? So send your answers through on our various different platforms. Let's get the conversation going. So I've got a question here from Martin Rees asking how long have I been doing tours and been a guide for. So I've been a guide since 2017. So what would that be? So so a bit like 9 years. So I've been guiding on and off for the past 9 years, almost a decade. But yeah, there's just, the more you guide and the more you learn, just the more you realize how much you don't know. And I think that's just the fascinating thing about being in this industry, is that you're just always learning something new, and it's just a very humbling experience, just knowing that nature is just full of surprises. It's always something new and interesting to discover or learn. So we've got an answer here from Lady Macbeth saying that the heaviest flying bird in the world is the great bustard. So interesting. So the great bustard is the heaviest flying bird. And where do you find the great bustard, Lady Macbeth? So Martin Rees says the emu is the heaviest flying bird. And then Wild at Heart says the albatross. And so yeah, let's see what else. What are some other answers? So I did a little bit of investigating myself, and it seems that the Kori bustard does hold the title for the heaviest flying bird, but it's a tight contest between the great bustard and the Kori bustard. But apparently a swan, a mute swan, can also contend for some of the heaviest flying birds. The heaviest birds capable of flight. So that's also quite interesting. And then you have the Andean condor. So it looks like almost like a vulture of the Americas, of North and South America. And then the Dalmatian pelican, which can also weigh up to 15 kilograms, as well as the Andean condor. So that's very interesting. Awesome. So let's see, we've got some beautiful zebra crossing the Mara River, going to the northern Masai Mara from the Serengeti. And it's such a beautiful sight to see. I think these programs, National Geographic and Discovery, back when I was still younger, they definitely inspired a lot of people to visit the Masai Mara and to see the Great Migration. And it's definitely become a very, very popular tourist attraction. Some might argue that it's a bit over-commercialized now, and so a lot of these lodges can charge very high rates. So it's a bit out of reach for most people, but anyways, it is still very special that we're still able to see these beautiful zebra and wildebeest migrating from Tanzania to the Masai Mara. Okay, so it was a bit of a mini crossing, but let's head back to Old Donyo and let's check out what's happening. Okay, so we've got some tarantulas in the front over here. So in Afrikaans we refer to these helmeted guinea fowl as tarantale, and so it just sounds like a tarantula. So I always joke and say they're like tarantulas. So so some helmeted guinea fowl over there, also just trying to get a little bit of a drink, if the elephant will allow. So I have a question from Emily asking, where have I guided? And so I've guided mostly in the Hoedspruit area, so mostly on reserves around the Hoedspruit area. So I've been quite fortunate to have not only guided, but I've been in different parts of the ecotourism industry. So I've been fortunate enough to have guided and have worked in reserve management. So I've been also able to work with anti-poaching teams and maintenance teams, and also working with organizations that deal with wildlife research. And I've also worked in the travel consultant industry, so I've done a bit of everything, but I somehow seem to always be drawn to the ecotourism industry. It's where my passion, from when I was a youngster, my grandfather used to take us camping in these very rugged terrains, and I just fell in love with the stories that he would tell, and just going on little hiking, walking safaris with him. And yeah, the rest is history. So Pablo is asking, is it true that no zebra stripes are the same? And that is true, Pablo. They all have unique stripe patterns, like we have unique fingerprints. So if you have enough time on your hands, you could go and look at each individual and try and take photos and try and identify them individually. But yeah, not many people are too interested in following a particular zebra. It's normally the predators and the elephants that are more, they're more researched, I would say, than zebra. I also did my honors, BSc honors in wildlife management, and a lot of the topics that one could choose from had to do with elephants. So there's a lot of studies on elephants, and a lot of studies on predators, but some of the other animals tend to be sort of not as popular to study. I guess there's just more of an attraction towards these larger predators and larger mammals. There's also a lot of research on bats and mice, field mice and that, and so it's actually also very important to study these biological indicators. So these mammals, which also can sort of give you a glimpse into how the ecosystem is functioning, how the environment is doing. So changes in these mammal populations can often tell you more than meets the eye. They can tell you a bit more about what's going on in the environment. So Alison is asking, is it natural or fed by a solar pump, submersible, borehole, or dam? So a lot of these waterholes, they tend to be found close to lodges, and with the obvious reason of attracting wildlife. And so obviously a lot of these tourists pay top dollar to see the wildlife, and if the lodges are able to attract the wildlife, that's all the better. So a lot of them do pump water to these shallow water holes, and so a lot of the time they are solar powered, and but it just depends. Some of the water holes that you see on the show are natural, completely natural, and aren't pumped with water, but on many of these reserves it's quite important, well, it's actually very important that you have surface water, because there aren't natural rivers that flow through the property, so they need to create these artificial water holes to keep the animals within the fences of the reserve. Otherwise they could die of thirst. So there's actually been some research into waterholes, artificial waterholes, and so some scientists argue that if you remove these artificial waterholes, the damage to the trees, especially the large trees, will be a lot less, because the elephants will be forced to sort of spread out, distribute more evenly throughout, let's say, the whole of the Kruger or the whole of the reserve on which they're found. So waterholes are a bit of a contentious issue, but yeah, it just depends on how you look at it, because these lodges play a critical role in conservation, because a lot of these lodges, they sustain the local communities, they provide employment for a lot of people, and they're just incredibly important, looking after the environment. And so in order to attract tourists to these lodges, they need to have the animals coming to visit. So if there's no animals, then of course there's the tourists won't be interested in visiting. So it's a bit of a fine balance between attracting animals and also trying to create as natural a system as possible. So Lady Macbeth says they've seen this one being topped up. They sometimes bring a Bowser. Okay, so that's interesting. So there's not a pump, like a borehole pump to this water hole. So I have a question from X asking if elephants make sounds through their trunk or their mouth, and so they trumpet through their trunk, but they can make other noises, low grumbling noises and that, but that's not through their trunk or their mouth. That's more with their vocal cords that they're able to do that. So please do keep your questions and comments coming in. I I did actually have a theme today. I wanted to speak about animal phobias. I wanted to find out, what animal are you most afraid of? So it could be any animal, not necessarily one that occurs on the show. I know a lot of people are afraid of snakes and spiders. So it's quite interesting because the majority of snakes that you find in southern Africa, at least, are harmless to humans. It's only a small percentage of them that are actually venomous or deadly. And so it's quite sad, really, that snakes are often demonized when they actually play such a critical role in the environment and controlling the spread of disease, and through controlling rodent populations. And spiders also, I mean, they do so much to keep the mosquito and fly numbers down, but yet we're terrified of them. But I think maybe it's just an innate natural instinct that we have, just to be afraid of these creatures, and maybe because they can inflict harmful bites and they can be deadly. But I guess if we just tread carefully and we're just a bit more intentional about where we place our feet and our hands, then we won't get bitten as often. But they're definitely very, very important, are these spiders and snakes. Okay, let's see what's happening at Tortillus. Beautiful. We've got some baboons over here, some gazelle, and a giraffe in picture. Busy numming on the delicious trees in the background. It's incredible, those long, narrow mouths of the giraffes. And so it's especially or specifically adapted in that way so that they can, because they are what we refer to as selective browsers. So browsers being animals that feed on trees and on different plants, whereas grazers feed on grasses. And so being selective browsers means that they are very picky about the leaves that they eat. So sometimes they'll have to put their muzzle deep into the canopy of a tree in order to get some delicious leaves that they're after. And they also have very thick and long eyelashes, and that's also to protect their eyes for when they are putting their heads deep into a bush or a canopy of a tree. And so that just prevents their eyes from being poked out by the thorns that you often find on these trees. So this camp is called Tortillas Camp, and it's very appropriately named because you find a lot of umbrella thorns in this region and in this area. And so tortillas is actually, it comes from the scientific word for the umbrella thorn, so which it used to be known as the acacia tortillas, but now it's been reclassified as the Vachelia tortillas, or you could say Vachelia. So a very iconic flat top tree that you find in these regions. It's so iconic that it's actually been used by one of the biggest banks in South Africa, First National Bank. The icon of First National Bank is an acacia or Vachelia tortillas tree, umbrella thorn. So Jamie is asking, what are those birds that are calling in the background? So I can hear a blacksmith lapwing, that clinking sound. Sounds like metal clinking together, and so that's how the blacksmith lapwing got its name, because it almost sounds like a blacksmith hammering against an anvil. And I can hear, it sounds like a hardy-dar in the distance, a hardy-dar ibis. It sounds like some weavers as well. They're beautiful. It's lovely to see how active this waterhole is. And it's just, as I was mentioning earlier, just so fascinating to see how it's almost as if the animals have different slots of when they can use the waterhole. You know, continuing with what I said earlier about having seen lions at Old Donyo's waterhole last night. I think it was at around 8 o'clock, between 8 and 9 o'clock last night. And so, yeah, it's just very interesting to see who visits the waterhole when. So, something that we refer to as temporal variation. So, temporal referring to time, and then so temporal variation basically referring to the different times when animals use different resources or different parts of the landscape. So Leo is asking, are the baboons foraging or drinking? So it looks like they're foraging. As you can see, they're picking out maybe some insects, maybe some larvae of some mosquitoes or something in between those aquatic plants over there, and bringing it towards their mouths to eat. And normally when the baboons drink, they have their muzzles directly on the water, so they will then drink up with their muzzles basically in the water. So they're busy feeding on foraging on whatever they can find in between those plants there. And baboons, they can also eat crocodile or monitor lizard eggs. So they also love eggs because of how protein rich they are. So these baboons are also very important in the environment because they're able to cover great distances, and they're foraging for all sorts of different creatures. So they ensure that the invertebrate populations are kept in check, like scorpions, millipedes, and lots of different critters, spiders, and all sorts of insects. And then of course also ensuring that the crocodile or the monitor lizard populations also kept in check. So very important baboons are in the environment, and they're also very good at dispersing seeds because they're omnivores and they love to eat fruit. So they're also very important when they eat the fruit, then they travel great distances and then they defecate. So they leave that seed in the feces, and then that feces creates a nice environment for the plant to then germinate from. So Emily is asking, are there crocodiles in the water? So that's a good question, Emily. I'm not too sure. I would imagine there would be over here in Kenya, but judging by how relaxed these baboons are and these gazelles, I would say that probably not, or at least not close to where these baboons and gazelles are feeding. So Kenny is asking, is this a bachelor herd of gazelles? And it would seem so. It looks like these gazelles, I believe they're Thompson's gazelles, or sorry, Grant's gazelles. And judging by the size of their horns, I would say males, and they all look like they've got very large horns. So it does look like a bachelor herd. So I've got a question from Martin asking whether baboons eat spiders. And yes, they do eat spiders, and they eat scorpions and lots of different invertebrates. They eat, one could say, almost anything that is of nutritional value. And interestingly enough, baboons are also able to eat some fruits that we aren't able to, because they're able to process the toxins found in the black monkey orange. So there's a fruit which they're able to eat, which we aren't. So quite interesting. Might even be that it looks like they're actually eating these whatever is sprouting here from the water. Can't really tell exactly what plant it is. But they've got a very versatile diet, the baboons, the Chacma baboons do. But I believe these are a different species of baboon. I want to say the yellow baboon, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can help me out as to what specific species of baboon these are. So Lola is asking, how do baboons establish social hierarchy? And oftentimes, which is the case with many mammals, is that they display their dominance, or they establish the hierarchy by showing how aggressive they can be. So baboons, male baboons, will show to a potential contender for the troop that he's more aggressive by, like, flexing, his muscles, pretending, or not pretending, but like sort of acting out and showing how large his canines are. They've got incredibly long and sharp canines, which can be very intimidating. And if that doesn't do the trick, then they will get into a fight where they actually use those canines and see how much bodily harm they can inflict, and see whoever runs away would be the weakest link. So yeah, that's how they, and a lot of mammals, through aggression, the males show their dominance. So much like the butts at the gym that Okay, let's see what else is happening. I believe we've got a reticulated giraffe at one of our waterhole sites. Wow, look at this magnificent giraffe. Reticulated giraffe. I can't say that I've actually seen one ever before. I don't believe we get them in South Africa. But this is a very special sighting, I would say. Very big, beautiful bull, or male, that's got some beautiful ossicones on its head, very thick, and also just very dark and stunning coat. Very, very beautiful. Just busy ruminating, busy chewing the cud. As giraffe are the largest ruminants that we find, so largest mammals with 4-chambered stomachs. Hence why they're also very selective with their diets, selective on what they eat. So they're always making sure that they've got high quality food, so that they can digest it with their four-chambered stomachs. And so they're always chewing the cud, making their food into a very fine material, making the bolus. If you watch closely this giraffe, he basically just regurgitated a bit of his food. You can see chewing now, and then he'll swallow, and then he'll regurgitate it again and chew it some more. This is just to break down those cell walls of the plants that they eat. So the cell walls can often be very thick and difficult to break down, and often many animals aren't able to break down the cellulose or the cell walls of plants on their own, so they require bacteria and other microorganisms to assist them in breaking down these plant walls, or these plant cell walls, shall I say, or cellulose, in order to get the nutritional value of the plants. So you can also see this giraffe has a bump sort of below the ossicones and between the eyes, and that's referred to as the median horn or median bump, and that's just another means of protecting their faces and inflicting more harm on a potential contender to the mating rights. So they aren't territorial, but they do fight for females, and they will also fight if they need to for resources. So beautiful watching how they're so elegant, the giraffe, the real models of the bushveld. You can see when they walk with both legs on either side, whereas some other mammals tend to walk with the one leg leading and then the other on the left hand side, and then the right hand side back leg will come in. So basically with the giraffe, the legs on either side will walk simultaneously. So the left side both legs will walk, and the right side both legs will move forward. So quite unique how they walk. And there you can catch a nice glimpse of that middle horn over there. Thank you, Zumi. A lovely image there of the giraffe's median horn. And then you can also see how luscious those lashes are, those eyelashes, very beautiful eyelashes of the giraffe. And they've got those long hairs on the tail, which then help them to swat away flies. So I have a question from Lola asking, what does a four-chambered stomach mean? And so basically, ruminant has a digestive system which has these four pouches, or these four compartments that are interconnected. And so basically what happens, the first pouch is called the reticulum, and so that's where the food gets stored when the giraffe is swallowing. It's the first compartment or or pouch or chamber which the giraffe or the food will enter, and then the food slowly starts to get fermented over there, and then that's when you'll see the giraffe, that bolus, the ball of food starts to move up its neck, and then it will chew it again. So the cud enters that first pouch known as the reticulum, and then it goes on to a next pouch known as the abomasum, and then the next one the omasum, and then the last one is the rumen. So it's a whole process of how, so basically these animals, they need all these different chambers in order to effectively digest their food. So they don't necessarily have to eat as much as, let's say, an elephant, because they're able to process their food a lot better. So relative to its body size, an elephant will eat a lot more than a giraffe. So elephants, they're only able to really effectively digest about, or process 40% of the food that they eat. This giraffe just nearly had a bit of a fall. So Lloyd is asking, do giraffe make sounds or are they completely silent? So contrary to popular belief, giraffe aren't actually mute. So many people believe they are completely mute, but it would seem that way when you look at them, and from my observations of giraffe, they don't seem to make much of a noise, but they do make sounds which are inaudible to human ears. So they make infrasonic sounds to communicate with one another. So a lot of the sounds that they make, we aren't able to hear, but they do make sounds, and sometimes there are sounds that we are able to hear. One time I heard a giraffe being killed by some lions, and I can't even describe the sound, but it was quite an interesting, unique sound. But yeah, poor giraffe. So Jenny is asking, how do giraffes sleep? And that's an interesting question. So because of their massive hearts and their high blood pressure, they actually can't sleep with their necks lying flat to the ground. So they need to have their necks upright all the time, so that their brain they don't get too much blood in their brain. So basically what they do is they tuck their legs in, and they sit down with their legs folded in but their necks upright, and they just basically rest their legs, and then they sleep like that. And then yeah, it's not always that easy to get up immediately if they were to be threatened, but so they are quite vulnerable. So they make sure that they're in a very safe space before they lay flat like that. Okay, so we're now at the beautiful Tau Game Lodge on Madikwe Game Reserve. We've got some kudu, some waterbuck, some elephant. Very special waterhole this at Tau Game Lodge. Very special game reserve too. It's the 5th largest privately operated game reserve in South Africa. So it's 75,000 hectares. So if you can imagine 1 hectare being the size of a football pitch or a rugby field, so and you just times that by 75,000, then you'll get an estimate of how big Madikwe Game Reserve is. So, very beautiful game reserve indeed. And so Madikwe is found in the northwest province of South Africa. So it borders with Botswana. Very beautiful. And just to the southeast of Madikwe, you'll find Pilanesberg National Park, which is the location of one of our Africams too, at KwaMaritan. So what's actually quite fascinating about Madikwe is that it was old degraded farmland, which then was converted to this now massive game reserve. So it formed part of what was in South Africa known at the time as the homelands. So when South Africa was divided back during apartheid, so there was a homeland known as Bophuthatswana, and so basically this falls under that area. And so this land was then converted to, so it wasn't being used, it was sort of just cattle that were roaming through these areas, and so someone decided to then convert this to a Big 5 game reserve, and it's done massively well. So it's the reserve itself is community owned, and there's also some lodges that are community run and owned. So it's just, so a lot of the proceeds, a lot of the conservation levies and that sort of thing, they go towards helping the local communities and uplifting the local communities, which is fantastic. So very unique in that sense. And so it was a huge undertaking to bring in all these animals or relocate them to this area, as they did many years ago occur naturally in this area before they were relocated to other areas. But so this big operation was known as Operation Phoenix, and so it involved relocating elephants and giraffe and lions, and it was a massive success. And you can see we are now reaping the rewards of this hugely successful conservation success story, as it's one of the best game reserves in the country at the moment, with some of the best lodges, world-class lodges. And we're very lucky that we have our very own Africam camera busy showing us some beautiful images of Tau's waterhole. So we've got a question here from Leo asking, how do elephants benefit the ecosystem? So they benefit the ecosystem in many different ways. So they're also very important in seed dispersal. So when they eat fruits, much like the marula fruit, they will then, when they're walking to a new area, then they will, when they defecate, that their dung, basically, as I mentioned with the baboons, the dung creates a nice sort of compost for the seed to then, or the plant to germinate from. So basically the marula passes through the elephant's gut, and so the digestive enzymes and juices of the elephant actually help to break down the shell of the seed, so that it makes it easier to then germinate once it's in the pile of dung. So elephants are very important as seed dispersers, and as we also mentioned earlier, they can dig holes to find underground water, and so they benefit other animals by providing temporary groundwater to other animals. And also they make some smaller water holes bigger through every time when they are rolling in the mud, or taking big chunks of mud to layer their skin with, as you can see with this bull in picture over here. Or it looks like the bull at least. But basically they use a lot of the mud, and so a lot of the mud also sticks to their body once they've rolled in it, and so over time these water holes get bigger and bigger, and they provide these nice big water holes for many other species to benefit from. And then also they are ecosystem engineers in the sense that they basically push over large trees, so they help other browsers to gain access to the leaves, which they wouldn't normally gain access to, because trees, they normally have the fresh shoots growing at the top of the tree, so the other animals can then gain access to those fresh shoots when the elephants push the trees over. And then also once the tree is pushed over, it creates a home, or a sort of refuge for many small mammals and reptiles and insects, and also birds, your ground birds, and that they can also then use that fallen over tree as a refuge, as a sort of protection against predators and that. So there's many different ways in which elephants benefit the environment. And also when they push over those trees, it also creates a more favorable area for grasses to grow, especially in areas where it's quite barren, where there's not a lot of grass growing. So it actually, they have huge amounts of benefits to the environment. And also, interestingly enough, they create these pathways through the bush, so through very dense thicket and vegetation, they create pathways, so they make the bush more accessible for lots of different species to gain access to the plants in a thicket where they normally wouldn't be able to penetrate or gain access to. So I was also going to mention that the elephants, the highways that you now see in Botswana today, were basically elephant paths which were widened and paved. So very interesting how we also as humans benefit from the work that elephants do. So Paul is asking, how long can elephants comfortably stay in water for? And so elephants can stay in water for, not underwater, just stay in the water for hours, just depending on how hot it is and how much they need to cool themselves down. So they use the water also as a way of regulating their body temperature. So on very hot days, they may spend longer, many more hours in the water than on cooler days. So Lola is asking, do elephants only drink clean water? And yes, elephants are very fussy when it comes to drinking water. They can drink dirty water, but they always prefer, if they can, to drink cleaner water. So often elephants will venture a bit further into a waterhole to get water that hasn't been disturbed by other animals or birds, that tend to congregate a bit closer to the shallower parts of a waterhole. So they'll go to the middle of the waterhole and drink the water there, as opposed to the shallower bits. And they also will sometimes dig a hole next to a perfectly good water hole, just so that they can get water that's been filtered out through the soil, that is cleaner than the actual water hole's water. So it's actually quite interesting. I've seen elephants in my time in the bush. Lots of elephants, they like to rip out man-made pipes. They will rip out these pipes and because they want to gain access. Meanwhile, there's a perfectly good water hole nearby. They will rip out these pipes that humans have laid and break them so that they can gain access to that fresh water that's being pumped from underground. They're very, very intelligent animals. So I think it's a very different story when you live in close proximity or you live alongside elephants than if you just simply view them once or twice on a safari, because they can actually cause a... Obviously we are living in their environment when we live on game reserves and that, but they can very often cause a lot of headaches for reserve management, just trying to keep everything operating as normal. So elephants, they love to push over fences and they love to dig up pipes and they love to break into people's gardens, veggie patches and that, and decimate that. So as beneficial as they are to other animals and to humans as well, they can also be a bit I don't want to use the word destructive, but the problem being that when humans do live in the little space that elephants have available to them, it does cause a bit of friction, a bit of conflict between animals and all these beautiful beasts and humans. And we haven't even mentioned the power of their poo, of their feces. So if you visit the Kruger National Park, they actually sell mean, they use elephant dung to make paper, and so you can actually buy little notepads or little notebooks with that are made of paper that's made from elephant dung. So besides that, elephant dung can actually also be used as medicine. Okay, let's head over to the Mara crossing to see what the zebras are up to. We were lucky enough earlier to see the zebras crossing the Mara River, but it looks like maybe these ones have already crossed. They're just having a bit of a drink of water. You need to be hyper vigilant, as there definitely are crocs about in the Mara River. So I was mentioning some of the uses of elephant dung. So elephant dung is also used as a medicine. Oh, you can actually see some of the crocs over there. Some of the crocs just waiting for they pick at a zebra or a wildebeest. So no, they have decided, bugger this, I'm out of here. Those crocs look ferocious. I'm not going to risk it today. So Benny is asking, what is the weight of a baby elephant? So they weigh as much as a Springbok rugby player at birth. So when they're born, they weigh 115 kilograms, or 100 to 115 kilograms. So over 200 pounds at birth. So basically they'd qualify to represent the Springbok rugby team, the national rugby team for South Africa at birth. Amazing how cool these crocodiles are. They're just, this water is flowing at a rapid rate and they're just chilling there as if nothing's happening. So I was mentioning that elephant dung can be used as a medicine. So when elephant dung is dried out and burnt, it can help cure, if you breathe in the smoke, it can help cure headaches. It can also help stop nosebleeds. I've seen some of my old colleagues try and use it to stop nosebleeds, and it worked quite effectively. But yeah, it's just super interesting that, and as my colleague now pointed out, elephant dung can also be used to make gin. So it's just fascinating that something that basically is a waste for one animal can be used for so many different reasons or so many different purposes for humans or for other animals. Just like the hippo when they defecate in the water. Oh, there. Speaking of the devil. A beautiful hippo over there. Another member of the Springbok rugby team. Plays as a prop in the front row. So in rugby you need a very heavy player to play in the scrum, and the hippo would definitely fit that mold perfectly. The hippo and the elephant, and I think the rhino would also be well suited to play for the Springboks. Okay, I believe there's lots of elephants at Tembe Elephant Park, so let's go and see what's happening over there. Looks like a bachelor herd over here at Tembe Elephant Park in KwaZulu-Natal. These massive tusks on this bull to the right corner of our screens. And you can see those two in the background that are joustling or whatever, fighting to establish a bit of dominance. So I was also mentioning that hippo dung, so the hippos, they defecate in the water, and then so that becomes food for fish like tilapia. So they eat the partially digested vegetation that the hippos passes through the hippo's gut. So it's very nutrient rich and beneficial for the tilapia. These Egyptian geese are very loud in the background. You can see this elephant just also busy putting a layer of dust on himself. Protect his skin against some pests, some ticks and flies and all sorts of ectoparasites, and also to protect its skin against the harmful UV radiation. There's a lovely 33 degrees Celsius over there in Tembe Elephant Park at the moment. Nice warm day over there. And I see in many at our other locations, it's also nice and warm. It's a very hot 34 degrees Celsius in Hoedspruit today, where I used to guide. So quite unusual for this time of year. It's not even properly spring yet, and it's already so hot. So you can see there's a bit of a layer of algae growing in the water over here. And so also another reason why hippos are so important for these aquatic ecosystems, these waterholes, is because their feces provides food for diatoms, these tiny microscopic organisms which require the feces, or the silica which you find in the feces of the hippo. So they require that silica to build their cell walls. So these diatoms they're tiny little microscopic single-celled organisms. So they're literally just one cell big, and so they require the silica in order to strengthen their cell walls. And so basically these diatoms, they ensure that there's a good balance in these aquatic systems. So they make sure that these algae these algal blooms don't get out of control. So it's also quite interesting to think about how hippos actually play a very important role in maintaining a good balance in these aquatic ecosystems. So Kelly is asking, how do elephants keep themselves cool in such hot weather? So basically, as you've seen, they spend a lot of time near the water, and so they spend a lot of time drinking to cool themselves off, also bathing in the water, rolling around in the mud, some cool mud to protect their skin and keep their skin cool. And also they flap their ears. It's one of the most effective ways to dissipate heat in their bodies. So basically their ears have loads and loads of blood vessels. So, and the rate at which blood flows through their ears is incredibly quick. So all of the blood in their bodies flows through their ears, and it all circulates within a 20-minute period. So all the blood in their body circulates through the ears in 20 minutes, and because their ears have skin which is very thin, and so the blood capillaries are very close to the surface of the skin, it allows for when they flap their ears, for the heat to dissipate and also to cool down the blood in those blood vessels. So Moonlight at Midnight says, thank you for a very informative morning. Till next time, enjoy your rugby, and I hope your team wins. Thank you so much, Moonlight at Midnight. I appreciate your comment there, and I do really hope the Springboks can walk away with a victory today. It's going to be a mammoth task, a huge task to beat the New Zealand All Blacks, but one that I think we are capable of. So to those of you who are watching that are from New Zealand, no offense, but yeah, I hope our Springboks end up victorious today. But I must admit the All Blacks are looking incredibly strong this year. And they've basically brushed aside all the other South African provincial teams that they've played so far, so that's going to be quite interesting to see. So you can see how this elephant is just flapping its ears. So that's just cooling himself off. So someone was asking earlier what the difference is between male and female elephants and how you can tell the difference. And one way is also by looking at their backs. So males tend to have a bit more of a curved back, whereas females have a bit of a straighter back. And then of course male elephants get much taller, much bigger. So they are much taller at shoulder height, and they have massive tusks so that they can fight for resources and for mating rights. And so we've also got some impala over there. Beautiful impala. So Lola is asking quite an interesting question. Lola's asking, why are some elephants more wrinkly than others? So that just boils down to genetics and then also age. So the older they get, the more wrinklier they get, and also some are just born more wrinkly, and that also has got to do with their surface area to volume ratio. So basically it helps to dissipate heat from their bodies to spread heat more evenly, and so it's actually in hotter environments it would be more beneficial to have more wrinkles. So probably you'll find that elephants that occur in forests would have fewer wrinkles, or maybe elephants that occur in, for example, the Eastern Cape might have fewer wrinkles than the ones in the north, in the Kruger National Park area. But that's quite an interesting one, and one that I'll have to do a bit more research on. Some beautiful bulls in picture over here at our waterhole. So I did want to mention, many of you might have already heard, but the unfortunate news of the passing of a very special conservationist and someone who worked incredibly hard and did a lot of pioneering work with canines. He started an organization called Canine Conservation in the Hoedspruit region. And so Conrad de Rosner passed away last week, and he was someone that I met a couple of times and who I was fortunate enough, privileged enough to meet a couple of times. And he published a book not too long ago called I think I'll have to double check the name, or Called by the Wild is the name of the book. But it was just incredibly shocking and sad to hear of his passing. And whether you liked him or not, he did a lot of good work for conservation, and he did a lot of risky work as well. So he was in many anti-poaching units, and I honestly think the anti-poaching units, the people that protect these beautiful game reserves and national parks, are the real unsung heroes of the bushveld, and they're the reason that we're actually able to enjoy these beautiful sightings of elephants and lions. And so they're the ones that are on the front line, that are risking their lives every day, having bullets flung at them, and being attacked by poachers, and being called at whatever hour in the morning. So I'd like to dedicate my show to Conrad and all those poachers out there, anti-poachers, that they do incredible work